All right. So we're live. So we're rounding out the data type part of the PHP Essentials course that I'm working through on lynda.com. I'm posting the link if you want to follow along. That link will be in the chat. Honestly, I don't know if you can find the chat after the fact. So if that is true, I am sorry. But if you go to lynda.com and search for the PHP Essentials course with Kevin, let's see, Kevin Skoglund. As of this recording, I am looking at the course that was released on 6/27/2017. So anyway, the last data type that we have yet to discuss is constants. And to be honest, constants have always kind of thrown me for, no pun intended, a loop. Best I can figure out in programming, it is helpful to have immutable data types, pieces of data stored in variables that will not change throughout your program. An example may be the width of your screen, or the resolution of your monitor, or the type of keyboard you're using. So whenever you want to reference, for example, the QWERTY keyboard type, if that's your type of keyboard, you reference the constant called keyboard type. And then if you ever need to move your program to another system with another keyboard type, rather than changing the keyboard type in every place it shows up in your code, you change the constant in one place, and that updates your code for everything. So I can see how constants in especially more complicated programs really make programs more, I don't know what the best word is, but transferable from one system to another. You know, different OSs that need different, I don't know, driver support, or different, basically whenever the environment changes and you need to change variables that are constant throughout your code but may be different from system to system, I can see how constant plays in. So anyway, we're going to talk about constants in PHP, then we're going to move on to control structures, which really goes into where you insert logic into your program. And let's just get through this. I'm excited to finish PHP and really get into WordPress.
PHP, because they're always done in all capital
We're
letters.
doing constants.
There's no
first.
dollar sign in front of them. They're also going to differ from variables in another way. The only way to set a value for a constant is to use a function, the define function. You can't just use the equal sign to assign a value like you can with variables. Let's try some experiments. We're going to open up basic.html, and then we'll just do save as. We're going to call this constants.php. Title here, the constants. And let's give ourselves the PHP block. Now we know how variables work. Let's say we had max width equals to 980. That would be a variable set with the integer 980.
Yeah.
If it was a constant, max width would not have the dollar sign in front of it, and it would be in all capital letters. Max underscore.
All capital letters.
Now if we wanted to set
no dollar sign prefix. So the case sensitivity of PHP is interesting, but it looks like in this case, if a line starts with a capital letter, it is probably a constant assignment, or it's using that constant. So I think a variable can't start with a capital letter, if I remember correctly. And this would explain why.
980, we can't do it by just simply saying 980. That doesn't work with constants. Because we're going to be doing them only rarely, we need to use this special function to do it. We're going to use define, and then
define.
Provide the name of the constant.
Got it.
In quotes. Max width. The second argument then will be the value that we want to set it to. So that's going to define max width.
So define
we use the quotes here.
Is define takes two inputs, the first of which is the name of the constant, the second of which is the value. Define this as that. Great.
But most of the time when we talk about the constant, we don't use the quotes. Why don't we use them here? Well, if you think about it, this is a constant. But how can we use a constant if it hasn't been defined yet, right? So we have to use quotes until it's been defined. We're just providing PHP with the string that we'd like to use for the name of it. So don't let that trip you up. Now, once it's been defined, then of course, we can echo back the value and see that it's been set. Let's just do that real quick. I'll save that, and we'll switch back over to Firefox. And instead of typecasting, we're looking for constants. There it is, 98. That's the value that's being echoed back as max width. Now, we can't change the value. Let's see that real quick. I'll put BR tag, and then let's open some more PHP. We'll make a note here. Can't change the value. Max width plus.
I love that you can do
one.
comments
And then
in
let's
line with
go back.
PHP. That's really cool.
Let's see what we get. All right, so if I go to the browser, reload it. Whoop, sorry, error. You can't do that. There's syntax error. We can't do adding to this.
Right, you can't
max
change
width
constant after the fact.
equals max width
I mean, even, yeah.
plus 1. That doesn't work either. Let's just switch back to that.
Well, you also don't have
Sorry, can't do it. Let's take both of those out. Let me show you that you also can't even redefine it.
Oh,
Right,
you
so let's
can't
just go down
redefine
here.
a
We
constant.
defined it here.
Huh.
Let's just change this. And let's say can't even redefine it. So let's say instead of 980, let's make it now 981. Let's try and echo that back and see what we get. So, oops, sorry, constant max width was already defined. And then what value did it give me back? 980. It didn't change anything. It basically just objected to this completely, said sorry, can't do it. And so max width stayed unchanged. It stayed constant. Now a constant stays defined for the duration of the PHP script. So of course, once the script ends and all the values are unset, then it can be redefined on the next run of the script. So think back to that diagram that we had of the request response cycle, right? When it comes in, it first grabs our script and executes it. It defines the constant stays defined until it returns HTML to the user. But at that point, the constant goes away. Everything in our PHP goes away at that point until the next request response cycle. So I don't think the value is forever set in stone. However, during one execution of your PHP script, that value is going to be defined and it is going to be fixed. Typically, you're only going to use them for things that don't change, things that you really want to be hard and fast. Maybe you're going to define the root path of the place where you're going to store images, right? So you want to have that as a fixed location on this hard drive. This is where you can find your image storage.
So you probably
That's
define
the kind of thing that you
all your constants
you're not going to be
toward the
it.
top of your code.
Have a fixed location for that.
Yeah.
So most of the time, you're probably going to want to use variables, and you're going to use constants sparingly. They're going to be very useful for saving data that's fixed. Chapter, we're going to be looking at how we can start to control the flow of our code, to have our code make choices about what should happen based on certain conditions. We're going to do that by using logical expressions. And the most common of all types of logical expression is the if.
Sorry, we're getting into if statements in just 1 second, but I need to do a quick personal thing. All right, let's look at if statements. So very easy concept to get your head around. You know, if something is true, then do something. That can actually be its own if statement. You don't need anything else. But you can also have an else statement, which will say, if something is true, do this. If it's not true, else do something else. So in PHP, I think what we're going to see is you're going to use the keyword if followed by some Boolean expression in parentheses, followed by a code block within brackets. And then I think that will be followed by else, optionally, and then another code block to execute for the else. Let's see.
Expressions. The most common of all types of logical expression is the if statement. This is the basic format of an if statement in PHP. You've got if, followed by, in parentheses, an expression. And that expression is going to evaluate to either true or false. It's going to have a Boolean result. So if the expression is true,
yeah,
the if statement that
if
follows
expressions
it
are
will
pretty
be executed.
similar.
If it evaluates to false,
Across,
then the statement will not be executed.
Yeah.
And the code will skip past it and keep on evaluating down
right.
the rest of the PHP after it. So for example, if we have if A is greater than
If
B,
A is greater than B,
then
echo
back,
A is larger than B.
So if the expression A is greater than B evaluates to true, then...
Is there an online tool? Because as I'm doing this, I'd love to be able to execute PHP code. Can I do like on W3C PHP sandbox? PHP, test PHP online, test your PHP code. How about learn PHP? The free interactive PHP tutorial, W3 Schools PHP. Try it yourself. Okay, this is good. So, right, W3 Schools is a, what do they call themselves? I think they call themselves the world's largest web developer site. So I've spent a lot of time on there. So PHP tutorials is great. I think I've even gone through most of these things myself. So so anyway, so right, I can basically, they have this sandbox tool. I'll copy the link to that so I can start to kind of use these PHP examples. So within HTML, I'm going to type in the PHP delimiter. Question mark. And then in between, I'm going to, if, in parentheses, A is larger than B, and then I guess no brackets, echo, A is larger than B. And then semicolon to finish that bad boy off. Let's run that. Nothing happened. How about echo the paragraph tag? Oh, well, we need to define them. Duh. All right, well, we'll leave the paragraph, but we will define that A equals 1 or 2, and B equals 1. So now this statement is true, and we run it, and we get it back. Nice. Let's make that an H1, just to prove that we can, in fact, echo HTML, and there it is. Now not only is A larger than B, but the string A is larger than B is larger than anything else.
When A is greater than B evaluates to true, then we'll get something echoed. If it's not true, then the echo line will never execute PHP.
Oh, now, sorry, I just have to. If I define those pieces of PHP in a previously delimited section of that page, is it still true? It is still true. So variables in PHP defined do not have to be in the same block of PHP code. That makes sense, but that is very important for me to understand anyway. Okay. Any other questions right now? Can you compare constants? Let's try defining constants. Define 1 as 1. Define 2 as 2. And copy that. Paste that. If 1 is greater than 2, echo that. Okay. Oh, right, because those need to be in quotes. Right, so when you're defining a constant, they need to be in quotes. Okay, good. No error, but also nothing. How about else? Echo. One is not greater than 2. Did I get that right? I think I did. All right, there's an if-else statement.
And move right on past it.
And we defined some constants. Very
This
nice.
format that I'm showing you here works if the statement portion that's going to be executed is just a single line. If you have more than one line of code that you want to execute for the statement portion, then you'll want to use curly braces around that statement. This makes it clear that everything inside the braces should be executed if the expression evaluates to true. It's required for multi-line statements, but it's also considered a best practice to add them around single-line statements too. It's clearer, and I also think it's easier to develop using one style and just to stick with it. So always use curly braces. Notice also that I've indented the statement portion. PHP doesn't care about the indentation. Remember, white space doesn't matter.
PHP does not care about indentation or
is going to
spacing,
help us a
right?
lot, because it's going to
Doesn't care about white
readability.
space.
It's also going to
That's
help you
great.
make sure
That's great for
every
us.
opening curly brace that I have a matching closing curly brace. When you start nesting these inside of each other, it can sometimes be hard to tell and easy to lose track of them. So let's start with those two good programming habits: always using curly braces and always indenting our code. Let's try some if statements for ourselves. So here I am in my sandbox, and I'm just going to open up basic.html. I'm going to choose save as, and I'm going to call this logical.php and save that in my sandbox. Logical. So let's just try the example that we just saw there. So we have PHP, and in it we're going to define A is equal to 4, and
all right.
B
so
equal to 3.
I just want like a random ass
And then
file.
write our statement. If A greater than B, use my curly braces. Notice that it indented for me. TextMate does that helpfully. Echo A is larger than B. Okay, so that's my statement. Let's go and try this out and see how it works. Switch back over to Firefox. And I'm going to be going to localhost, Kevin Skoglund, and sandbox logical.php. A is larger than B. Now you can play with those values. You can say, all right, let's set these in reverse. Let's go back. Let's reload the page. And notice that it doesn't output anything. It only evaluates what's inside the curly braces.
This is all making sense, right? I mean,
simple enough. All right, let's try some.
If something's
some
true, execute the code block underneath.
A little less experimental.
Yeah.
Let's say that we have a website and we want to have a special welcome message that displays only to new users of the website. So we determine whether someone is a new user or not. In this case, I'm going to say that it's true. If
someone's a new
true,
user,
then we're going to
echo
display
welcome.
this welcome message to them. So we can experiment with that.
Right.
You can try this from true to false and back again.
So conditional.
Here.
Yeah.
On browser. And you'll see that we get out
all kinds of conditional things in PHP.
Sure. Another good example.
Web mixed with conditions.
By 0.
Mind blown, right?
Problems. Well, here's a way to check that. We have a numerator that's 20, denominator is 4. If the
Don't divide by
greater
0.
than 0, then it's okay to proceed with the division. If it isn't greater than 0, then we may have a problem here because this can't be 0. I realize that this doesn't count for negative numbers, but you still get the point. You see what I'm saying? That it is not letting you divide by 0 before it gives you the result. Let's just try that one out real quick. He says, no problem. I can go ahead and I can do that division. Now, notice that the echo for result is occurring inside this if statement. I just want to move that out of there so that you see what happens if I do this. All right, so it doesn't do the division, but it's going to echo then the result here. Let's go back and see what happens when we load that up. It works just fine. But if I now make the denominator into 0 so that it would not execute this statement, right? Because now this fails, this is false. Let's come back over here.
LSD
equals undefined variable. The result, no result there. So notice that the result is being defined in the if statement. It's an important point. If we're defining variables in the if statement, we need to make sure that we account for the possibility that result is not set. Right? So we're going to start with a result of 0, and then that way result will still have a value, because this code does not execute at all if that statement is not true. So you want to watch for that. Think about the sort of path through your code. If the if statement doesn't execute, none of the variables.
I want to make sure I get this down. So they're demoing some code here where you're echoing something where it's a mix of a string and a variable. And I'm pretty sure that I remember it, but I'm just going to solidify it in my mind. So basically what you do is in PHP, and now I'm using Atom to kind of speed up that process. You're going to do echo. Well, first let's set a variable. But yeah, echo, and then result, colon, and then in brackets, $var. And I'm going to define var, assign it the value of Aaron Shine, which is my awesome name. And we're going to take that and plop it into our test environment. And I'm pretty sure that should run no problem. Static VR tag right there. VR. Yep. So I got that right. Can I do multiple? Result var. Let's concatenate that with a space, and then 2 more, and then var2. var2, and we will define var2 as $. var2 equals is awesome. What? So I think I nailed all of that. I concatenated with the dots, the periods outside of that. Boom. And China is awesome. So yeah. Dynamic results inside. Right. So the real power of this is going to be when we can set conditions. I mean, I'm jumping ahead here, right? But oh man, when we start using JavaScript in line or just tangentially with PHP, we're going to be able to dynamically populate pages using PHP based on environment variables of the user. We can get things like the user agent, the size of the, yeah, this is powerful stuff. And it's only more powerful than JavaScript alone because PHP is server-side, which means a few things. And I'm not quite sure what all of them are. I think one of them, at least, is that you can obfuscate the logic. So you can't see the PHP code of a page by inspecting the element in a browser, which is one way to keep the algorithmic logic employed in websites secure, right? Because once PHP renders the page, all you see is the resulting HTML. So anyway, I could be way off on that. logic, but it's all
Assignments that you make
starting
in
to
there
come
are
together.
going to be available to you. Okay, let's go back up here to the top, and you see that
Starting
we've got
to.
this. If A is greater than
Still
B,
got a ways to go.
so if we wanted to account for the possibility that if A was less than B, we could say A is not larger than B, right? And that would work. However, there's a better way to do that than to just do a series of if statements, one after the other. And we're going to see how to do that in the next movie.
The else and else if.
Section of code that only executes if an expression evaluates true. In this movie, we're going to build on that by talking about else and else if. That is the ability to have an alternative that gets executed if something is not true. Let's take a look. So if we have if A is greater than B, we want to echo A is larger than B. We can use else immediately after it to say if that's not true, then the alternative version should be to echo this section of code. This statement, echo A is not larger than B. So one of these two things will be true. We've basically divided the path into two and said, if this is true, do the first statement, else do the second statement. Now, again, this is without the curly braces, which is suitable if you have only a single line of code, but I'm going to strongly encourage you, even if you have a single line of code, to always use curly braces. And if you have multi-line code, you'll definitely want to use them.
So just basically always use curly braces when you do
binary
if else,
even
even though it's only completely necessary if you have
multi-line.
multi-lines. So
And its statement
we'll see what that looks like in WordPress.
The rest of the options below that are skipped over. It jumps to the very end of this whole statement, down to the very final curly quote. And that's where it picks up and gets executed. So if A is greater than B, echo A is larger than B, and then jump down to that final curly quote and proceed from there. It doesn't continue checking for additional options. Once it finds one, it's done. It's done with this whole entire statement. Now, in addition to just else, we also have else if. And that lets us string multiple conditions together. So we could say, if A is greater than B, then echo A is larger than B. Else if A is less than B, echo A is smaller than B. Notice before I said not larger, because there's the possibility that the two are equal.
So I'm guessing if I say else if,
do another
and then I
test.
don't have a condition,
So if the first one matches,
have some kind
we'll
of
do the
error.
first statement.
Yep.
The second one matches, we'll do the second statement. If A and B are equal,
So else
well,
if
then neither
then
one of these are going
requires
to execute.
something in
Neither one of these
parentheses,
conditions were met,
which is a
so we'll
condition.
just keep going from there. And of course, we can combine all three of these together, so that if A is greater than B, we echo A is larger than B. If A is less than B, we echo A is smaller than B. Or the final catch-all is the possibility that A is equal to B. It's not greater than, it's not less than, it must be equal to. So when we only have two, else is the alternative version. If we have multiple ones, then else is sort of the default. It's the final thing. None of these other conditions match up above. This is the final result that you ought to do. Let's go back to our page and try this. So I'm going to go back to the same page I was working on before. That's the logical.php. We'll just do it on the same page. Notice before that I had two if statements. If A is greater than B, or if A is less than B, I can now convert those. And I can do it by using else, and say else A is not larger than B, or the other way to do it would be, I'll do that, change this to say else if A is less than B, A is not larger than B. Now that's not quite true. A is smaller than B in that case, and so then we can add that final condition. We'll echo A is equal to B. Now once again, if A is greater than B, this bit of code gets executed. After that, it jumps right down to here and keeps executing our PHP. If this one's not met, then it goes to the second one. If that's not met, then it goes to the third one. So after each one of these, after each determination is made, that block gets executed, and then it jumps down here to continue with our PHP. So the combination of these three, the ability to have if, and else, really gives us lots of control over the flow of our code. We can now start to fork our code and say, if the new user is true, well, give them a welcome message. If they're not a new user, give them a different message. If they are a user type of student, give them one thing. If they're a business,
Literally forgot that I own
this. If they're a consumer,
good to have, right?
Else. And we can start nesting these inside of each other as well. So that if they're a student and they also are enrolled in a special program, we give them a different message. You can really start to see the important role that logical expressions are going to play in programming with PHP.
2016. Not bad, not bad.
Last movie, we learned about basic logical expressions.
Funny that 2016, so long ago, and this is like when I started considering
And I want to
starting a career in this stuff. So, I mean, it's exciting to know that like all this stuff moves so quickly. And also a little depressing to like think about how long it's taking me to get here.
In the previous example, we said if A is greater than B or
daunting,
A is less than B,
exciting,
less than and greater than are comparison operators. But there are a number of other ones that we can use as well. One of the most important ones is equal. R2 equal. Compare them. Is A
so a double equal sign
is
made
up of two equal signs. When we're testing if something is equal, we do it by using two equal signs. So when we have one equal sign, we're doing assignment. We're assigning a value to something. When we have two of them, we're comparing the two. It's important to keep the two straight. One is for assignment, two is for comparison. We also have another version, which is 3 together, which is for identical. Now, what's the difference between equal and identical? Well, there are some things that are considered equal because they're roughly equal. For example, the number 1, 2, 3 is considered equal to the string 1, 2, 3. Because if we convert the types,
equal
then they're
is
equal.
2 equal signs, identical is 3 equal signs.
Be of the same type as well.
Identical needs to be the same type as well.
They're absolutely
2 different
same.
checks, 2 different Boolean checks.
With 2 of them. There's also comparison. We saw the greater than, less than. There's a greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. Or it's either less than or greater than. And of course,
which is
not equal to. We can also just simply say not equal using exclamation point equal. That exclamation point is going to mean not in PHP. We're going to see that again later on.
Exclamation point equal means not equal.
Not identical.
That's the same as the less than greater than, right? Sign. I mean, I just want to test that. So basically, I can test, new block of PHP. So this is going to be, I'll just use the same. I don't care. I don't need to record all this. Right? I don't think so. If 1 is not equal to, let's get rid of that. I have a text expander, and I had it set so that the less than greater than would give me something. So I need to make an exception for this code. Can I do it just for this particular one? Pattern. Let's make a new group. Ignored in Adam. Adam in iTurn. Okay, so if 1 is less than greater than 2, then execute echo. These are not equal. These are equal. Else, echo, these are not equal. So that all right, these are not equal. These are equal. And I can also do not equal, right? And that should do the same thing. Just some basic tests. These are not equal. Great. But now if I do the less than greater than, the less than space greater than, obviously, 2. Oh, did I do this stupid? Okay, there we go. And when I made those strings, yeah. But I think that would, oh no, wait. I'm missing a curly brace. 1. These are not equal. So that's okay. What if I do 1 as a string, and then I do an array of 1, 2, 3? These are still not equal. So that is true. And I could do not equal as an exclamation point, and they're still not equal. If I claim that that is not equal to that, these are equal. And if I use 2 strings and use this comparison, these are equal. So the less than greater than logical operator as not equal is seemingly identical to, as a comparison operator, equal to the exclamation point assignment operator equal sign. Doesn't matter if they're integers or strings or what have you. Okay.
Notice that in each case, for equal and identical, what we're doing is replacing the first equal sign with that exclamation point.
This is good stuff.
Now, in addition to using these to construct a single expression,
PHP is huge. So
is this equal to that, or is this greater than that, or is this not equal to that? We also can combine several of these together by using some logical operators. So, for example, for AND, we can use 2 ampersands together. What we're saying
yes,
here is
logical
if
and
A
logical
is greater
or
than B, and
double
if C is
ampersand.
greater than D. We're testing 2 different things and combining them with this AND. Both
double
parts of
pipes
it
is
have
or.
to be true. If this is true and this is true, then the whole expression evaluates to true. We also have OR. That's made of these 2 upright bars, often called pipes. Take a second to figure out where that is on your keyboard. It's typically right above the return key.
Oh, don't
this
worry.
Could be a logical OR. So if A is greater than B, or if C is greater than D. And then, of course, as we talked about, there's not. So if something is just not true, we can negate the expression just by putting the exclamation point in front of it. It basically just flips it around to be the opposite. Let's try a few examples. Let's start by just opening up basic.html. And we'll do a save as. I'm going to call this one operators.php. It's going to contain both our comparison operators and also our logical
for the
operators. Let me just drop down here in the body, and I'll give you the first example.
So for the use of the exclamation point in front of let's do this one. Okay, so if 1 is not equal to 2, that's true, but if you put an exclamation point in front, that should make it not true, so then it should evaluate the else. However, you get a parse error, syntax error, unexpected exclamation point, expecting open parentheses in gibberish on line 40. So you need an opening paren before the exclamation point. Which I believe Python's more forgiving there. if I remember correctly.
You can pause the move if you need to copy this down. I've got A equals to 4, B is equal to 3, C is equal to 1.
Yeah, this
D
is getting
equal
to, like,
20. Notice that those are assignments.
I miss
using
logic, man.
Single equal sign. Then I've got my
If you're in
expression.
college right now
If
and you have a
A
chance
is
to take a
greater
logic
than B,
class and
notice
you
that
like
I'm
math,
using
just do
parentheses
it.
around
It's so
it
much
to group
fun.
it together. And if C
I
is
miss
greater
it.
than D. So if both of
I
those
miss
conditions
logic.
are met, this and this, then this entire expression will evaluate to true because both parts have been met. So both trues together mean that the whole thing is true. If either one is false,
Yep.
well then it's not a true statement.
Right.
It's not true that both A is greater than B and C is greater
Yep.
than D.
This is,
So it
I think we
evaluates to
get
false.
this.
So let's
I think
just try
I
this
know
out.
all
Let's
about
bring this up in
this.
the browser. And instead of logical, go back and try the or didn't work before. Right? So now one of them is true. A is greater than B, but C is not greater than D. Let's go back and reload it. So A is larger than B or C is larger than D. That's what an output for us. So as I said, we can also use some different comparison operators. We can say that one thing is equal to something, something is equal to that. You can feel free to play around with those and try different values and see what you're going to get back. Let's try a real world example. I'm going to do one here for if, and I'm going to use the not, right? The exclamation point, that means not the case. If is set, and I'll make it E. If not is set, right, that's the opposite. If it's not set, then we're going to set E equal to 200. And then let's just echo back the value of E.
Mm-hmm.
ER tag here. Just
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So this happens a lot in WordPress, I think. It's I believe that's where you can plug stuff in, because if something, yeah, in the parent theme, you'll get a lot of conditional statements in WordPress that say, let's call the function Flambeau, right? So let's say WordPress has a built-in function called Flambeau that is pluggable, meaning you can overwrite the functionality of it in a child theme. So the way child themes work is by making a child theme your default and then giving that child theme a functions.php file. Any functions within that file are read first. So if you define Flambeau in that file, the WordPress would then hit the following. So in the parent theme, you would see if Flambeau is not set, and then it would define that function, the Flambeau function. But in the case of child theme, if you've already defined it, that if statement evaluates to false, and it doesn't ever run that code. So that's a pretty, I mean, it's a smart way to make your code overwritable by another file that runs before. So this is a real world example that we are going to run into quite often for actions and filters in WordPress, which I will be learning, which I don't understand yet, but I will understand it. Rest assured.
Well, so let's try this. Let's see if it outputs something for E. Back 200. Now let's experiment here. Let's set E up here as well. Let's
right.
E
if it's already been set and E is equal to 300
100.
or 100,
okay, so let's
it should output 100.
Now it's equal to 100.
Good.
Because it got here and it said, oh, it's already been set. So I don't need to give it a default value. This is a good way to set default values. If something's not set, well then set it. Let's do another good real world example here. Let's do one with empty. We talked about empty, and I said you have to be really careful when you're using empty. Let's say that we have a form coming in, and we don't want to reject 0 or 0.0 as being valid values. Well, we can say...
I like this first one, so I want to experiment with is set. So I'm going to copy this verbatim, and we'll play around. E is 100 if it is not the case, and then I guess you don't need parentheses in front of that, so just exclamation point ISSET E in brackets, assign it, E equals 200. And then under that if block, echo E. Great. So we're gonna bring that over to our W3 schools window, do a quick BR, run it. We get 100 out. If we comment out that E, it's gonna be 200. Let's try this. Let's make E equal to you've been hacked. And then all systems are go. Comment that out. Yep.
The quantity entered is empty, and if it is not numeric, then we say you must enter a quantity. But if they've given us empty, but it is numeric, right, it fails this part of it, then it's probably a 0 or 0.0, and we'll allow it through. Let's just try real quick. Quantity. Let's just set that equal to 0. We'll add another BR tag here just so it'll separate it out nicely. There it is. It didn't respond to it. But if we said, for example, that it was a blank string, now we go back, we reload it. It says, you must enter a quantity.
Now you don't need
There's
that,
also the
though.
powerful combinations that can be made here. You can nest different logical operators together. You want to use parentheses to help you group those together so that you can keep them straight. So while these comparison operators and logical operators are really simple in themselves, they combine to develop some really powerful expressions. We can keep stringing together, we can nest them inside each other, so that if all sorts of conditions are met, the final evaluation is either true or false. We'll decide whether or not we execute some code. And that's going to be a powerful thing. In this movie, we're going to be looking at a different kind of logical expression called switch statements. Switch statements are similar to
switch
if
statements.
In that they
Dude, I
control
don't
the
get
flow
switch
through our
statements.
application.
What
They're
the
going to have
hell?
different
Like, why?
syntax, some different rules to follow, and a couple of special gotchas that we want to make sure that we watch out for. First, let's look at the basic syntax.
Someone's got to
use
make
the
me fall in love
function
with
name
switch
switch,
statements.
followed by an argument.
Switch.
The argument's going to be a value.
Argument
The
as a
that we're
value.
gonna be testing through each of a series of
Case,
test cases.
test.
So then in our
statement.
curly braces, we're going to list off those test cases. And each one is going to start with case and then a test value. We're going to test against value to see if they're equal. And then a colon, and then a statement or series of statements that we want to execute. Then following that will be the next case that we
PHP supports
want to test.
switch
We'll
statements.
test whether the value is equal to test value 2. And if it is, then we'll execute those statements. And then finally, we have the option to provide a default case. If it doesn't match any of the above cases, we're going to execute the statements that are defined by default. So notice that we're dropping down each one of those cases, doing a test on each line. It's very similar if we've written if, else if, and else. The big difference here is that we're testing equality. We're testing to see, is the value equal to test value 1? No? Okay, move down to the next one. Is value equal to test value 2? It's a very simple comparison of equality. There's no greater than or less than or anything like that. And usually we're not working with Booleans because a Boolean is either true or false. So there's really not a lot of test cases. Where you would see it more is if you had something like a string, it could be many different things. For example, let's say that our customers had told us that the way that they wanted to be contacted, and they might have said that they wanted to be contacted by email or by phone or by some other method, text message, Skype, something else. So we can have a switch statement that then executed a set of statements based on the way that they told us they wanted us to contact them. Now I've only provided 2 case statements here in a default, but you can have as many cases as you need. You can just keep adding different cases each time. Now most times you're probably going to want.
I guess it is
You're going to use those way more often than switch
convenient.
statements.
Let me
Switch
just think
statements-
this through. So my case against switch statements has always been, why not just have an if-else with a long list of elifs, right? If it's this, do this. If it's this, do this. And I don't know if computationally switch statements are more efficient. Maybe there's some kind of hashing algorithm involved that I don't really understand. But, and if anyone knows, please let me know. But I also see that it's somewhat simpler, like to think about it as if like, okay, based on the value I'm putting in the switch statement, I guess think of it like a switchboard, right? Like a switchboard, like, okay, dating myself, but even before I was alive, if you were to call someone, you would get an operator, and the operator would be in front of a switchboard, and the switchboard would be literally a panel of, it looks like when you plug in a guitar, right? You would plug in a cable from the telephone from the person calling you into the port of the person they were calling. And then that would be your connection. So you had a whole bunch of options, and based on the certain case of the call, you as the switchboard operator would fulfill that case. So it wouldn't be if else in the traditional sense. It would be if this particular instance, then this particular consequence. So maybe on the back end, a switch statement looks like an if else statement. Maybe computationally, you know, it goes line by line. Is the case an email? Is the case a phone? But humans can look at a number of different cases at once and treat it less like an if else and more like what programmers have come up with as a switch statement. The default seems like an else, right? So else, if we can't find any of these cases, default to that, which is fine. It's like a catch-all, right? It's fine.
It'd be very useful when you do have this kind of compact logic, where you really are just saying, all right, I want to test a value, and that value can be 10 different things. So I'm going to list off the 10 different things that could happen if that value is each of those 10 cases, and I'm going to provide code for those. The parallel structure can be a little
All right, sorry. Let's keep going here.
easier to read and to work with. Okay, now that we know the syntax and the basic idea, let's try some out. I'm going to create a new page where we can work with these. I'm going to open up basic.html, and I'll do save as, and we'll call this switch.php. Change the title will also be switch, and let's give ourselves a PHP area. All right, so to start with, let's just give ourselves a variable. We'll call it a, and we're going to make a equal to 3. And then let's do a switch statement. Switch, and then send the variable in as the argument to switch. So we're going to be testing variable a, and in the case where it is 0, we're going to echo a equals 0. Tag at the end, and semicolon after that. Okay, now let's take that same thing, I'm going to paste it here Let's make our next case that it's 1. All right, see what we're doing here? Let's see the parallel structure. I'm actually going to copy both of those now. Save myself some typing. I'm going to make this one 2, and this one 3. Put those here and the text. So there we go. Now we have our cases. Now remember, I could also have a default case. For now, I'm not going to do the default case. Let's just do the simple one. We're going to test whether it's 0, 1, 2, or 3. If it's not that, if it's 4, 5, or 6, well, then none of these will execute. We'll just move on right past this whole statement. So let's save it and let's try it out. Let's go back to Firefox. And instead of logical, we're going to look for switch.php. A equals 3. Perfect. See how that worked? It skipped right past these cases, tested them, said nope, 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 yes, this one matches. And so then it executed the statement. All right, let's just try moving A, making A equal to 0. Let's see what happens here. Save it.
I mean, conceptually, it's not hard to figure out.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Oh, right.
I
forgot about
That's
this.
correct. It didn't match that case.
You have to break after each
it also came back and told us
switch
it was equal to 1, 2, and 3, which it's obviously not. And if we put another value in here, like 2, go back and reload the page, you'll see that it comes back and it executes the first one and every case that comes after it. It's an important point about the way that switch statements work. They use a statement that matches.
Yes. Switch statements in PHP execute the first case that matches in every other case unless you break. Let's test that out because it's kind of confusing to me. So we're going to do switch. Let's see. A equals 0. Switch A. Then that needs to be curly braces. Case 0. Echo. A equals 0. One, two, three. Okay. So that's going to be 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. All right. Right. So if A equals 3, it only executes that 1. Whoops. Here. Great. So when will that be useful? I don't know. Break, right? So you got to add break statements and just like break, that's the key word. So break will break out of whatever loop you're in or whatever, I guess, control structure you're in this case, switch. So whatever thing that is either explicitly or implicitly sectioned off by curly braces. So a switch statement is such a thing, and if else statement is such a thing. It breaks out into the next highest part of the flow of code. part of the flow control of break means that it breaks out to one level up. And that's important because you can have if statements nested within if statements. I assume you can have switch statements nested within switch statements, although I'm not sure. Case one, let's say this is defined again. Within case one. So B is 1. Now let's try that. A switch statement in a switch statement. Some said it couldn't be done. Here we go. Yep, but if we change that case to be 1, A equals 1 and B equals 1. And then if A equals 2, say B equals 2. Good.
And then they continue to match every one that comes below it. Well, that's probably not what we wanted. So if you don't want that behavior, then you've got to provide a break statement. So break
statements, break statements for days.
Each one. Now when we go back, let's make it equal to 0 again. Save it. Go back to Firefox. There it is, A equals 0. That's the behavior that we would expect. Because we told it, okay, you've done your statement, now break out of the switch statement, and that will then drop down here to the curly brace and keep going from there. So this break is super, super important when you're working with switch statements. Drill it into your head and you'll save yourselves a lot of debugging time. Now, as I said, we can have a default case here as well, default, and then echo, and then A is not 0, 1, 2, 4, 3. And you don't have to have a break here because it's the last one, but I'm going to go ahead just to keep the parallel structure and also just to keep reminding myself that that break is very important to have. And I'll put it in there. Now let's just try A is equal to 9. Go back to Firefox, and there it is. It's not equal to 0, 1, 2, 3. You can see how that works. All right, I'm going to set that back to 2, and let's just drop down here. And I want to show you another example. This example is going to output the Chinese zodiac, the year that it is in the Chinese zodiac. So to do that, we're going to do a little bit of a calculation. We're going to take the year. We're going to use 2013, and I'm going to subtract 4 from it and do the modulo of that using 12. That means that I'm finding the remainder once we divide it by 12. So after we divide by 12 evenly, how many are left over? So that end result is going to be a single value. So even though I've got a calculation in here, it's a single value that comes through in the end, and that's what I test. So whatever that value is, whatever that remainder is, it will check. If it's 0, then we are in the first year of the 12-year cycle. So it is the year of the round. If it's a 1, well, then we know we're in the next year, and the year is the opposite. So what I want to show you here, though, is that white space doesn't matter. You see the difference here? Up here, we had each one of these in a separate line. Case 1, echo, break. Case 2, and so on. Here, I've got them all one after another, very compact, very easy to read. We even added in some extra spaces here in front of the numbers to keep it all lined up, nice, tight, easy to read. I've still got my colon, I've still got my semicolons to separate the commands, and I've still got break. But the white space doesn't matter. All right, just so we can see that, let's go ahead and bring that up in the browser. I'll put a BR tag here at the end. It pops up and it says 2013 is the year of the snake. And the user type is going to be equal to customer. Right? It could be customer, it could be student, it could be press, it could be something else.
Different greetings.
If that user type
different
is student, then we're going to echo back welcome. If it's
so
press,
just get used to when you're using switch
greetings,
statements
and if
to
it's customer,
include breaks
say
in
hello.
each case.
what I want to show you is, what if you had multiple cases that you wanted to match on something? What if you wanted to have press and customer respond to the same set of statements? I mean, we could say hello and just do it there, but this is a simple example. I mean, imagine if this was in fact 20 lines of code.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So 20 lines of code, and we're going to
Right,
repeat that 20 lines of code again? No, I don't really want to do that. Now,
Have
this is the thing I
multiple
want to caution you
cases.
about. You may be tempted to do something like this, and to say case, press, customer with commas between
It's not
them.
comma
That's how you do it
separated.
in some other languages.
Nope.
It's not how you do it in PHP, though.
Yeah, multiple cases
In
you
PHP,
do.
if you want them to have the same one, well, guess what?
Just
Just
delete
put them one after another.
Right.
Because what happens when press matches? It executes the statements that are here, and then all the statements that are below it, until it gets to a break. So press customer is going to do the same set of statements because of the way the switch works. You can see now why the switch statement behaves the way it does, and why it needs you to put in that break some of the times, because there are cases when you're not going to use the break, when you have multiple values like this. So we could have press, we could have customer, we could have case, and it's admin, right? We can just add more cases, and each one of those is going to do this block that's below it. So let's save it, and let's just try it. Let's go down here. Reload the page, and there it is. Hello is what we get back as the result. That is the statement that goes with the case for customer. So as I said, you're going to use if statements a lot more than you're going to use switch statements. But if you look up here at something like this, where you have the Chinese zodiac, this is the classic case for when you're going to want to use a switch statement. Writing if-else statements for all of this just doesn't give you the same legibility and ease of maintaining the code as the switch statement does. In the previous chapter, we looked at the first type of control structure, logical expression, which let our code make choices about how to proceed.
All right.
In this chapter,
so this has been about another hour. We made it through the, we talked a bit about constants, which was nice. And then we talked about the control structure for different logical expressions. The next thing we'll discuss in PHP is how loops work. So you may have heard of while loops and for loops. There's also a for each loop, and then we're going to talk about array pointers, but we'll leave that for another video. This has already been a lot. If you have any questions for me about the best way to learn about PHP or WordPress, I'd love to hear from you. I do my best to monitor my channel, although this is all new for me, so apologies if I don't get back to you in a timely manner. Yeah, and I guess I'd also welcome any tips you might have for me about maybe a more efficient way of learning things, or I don't know. I mean, I'm having a great time making these videos, even if no one watches them. So I think I'll keep doing that. But all right. Well, anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.